Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this episode of the Mic Drop. This is one special episode. I'm really excited to play it here. And it's dangerous to go alone. So I'm here with my mate, Larry. How you doing, Larry?
Hey, I'm good. How are you, Brittany?
I'm totally fine. And we get this introduction because we're talking about one of my favorites
Oh yeah.
sagas, which is The Legend of Zelda. Yeah.
Woo!
Now we're reviewing the last game, The Age of Calamity. So, Larry, how can you
Yeah.
tell us about this game?
Right, good question. Very good question. So, Hyrule Warriors: Age of Calamity. It's a game that came out for the Nintendo Switch just toward the end of last year, 2020. It's developed by Omega Force and published by Nintendo and also Koei Tecmo. You may, for those of you who familiar with the Warriors series of games. Essentially, this type of game it connects in style to the Dynasty Warriors series, which is a kind of hack and slash action video game. And there are various iterations that are stretched across different historical points of feudal Japan. But with Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, essentially what we're focusing on story-wise, as well as bits of gameplay, which we'll get into, is the game centers itself within the Legend of Zelda universe, and more specifically, the timeline that is related to Breath of the Wild, the game which, of course, launched with the Nintendo Switch and came out on the Wii U a few years prior. We both managed to play through and complete the game.
Yeah.
I I had a good time with it. I mean, it wasn't perfect, and we'll obviously open that up. But I've got to say, I had a good time. This is the first game that I've personally reviewed. I speak about games so much, and I talk to people about games, but it's quite nice to actually kind of talk about things perhaps within a critical perspective. And I guess one of the first things that I'll personally say is that I was blown away by how good the story is.
Yeah.
Um, for those of you who perhaps may have played Breath of the Wild, I would say that the storyline within Age of Calamity, in some respects, actually surpasses it. Um, I loved Breath of the Wild. In fact, I think it's one of the best, if not the best, Legend of Zelda game for various reasons. We don't need to. Yeah, I know. I saw your face. That I'm sorry, Brittany. I know. I know. Look, Ocarina, I love it too. Majora's Mask, I love it. But look, all right, I'm not trying to start any wars here. But and I love that game, right? But my issue, the very small issue that I had with it, which isn't always necessarily a problem if you know Zelda games, right, is that the story to me felt like it could have opened up even more. Even if you collect all of the memories within the Breath of the Wild game, it still kind of drops short of like giving you an immersive kind of cinematic experience of storyline, of really kind of holding on to characters who you really care about. Of course, people became fans of certain, characters and whatnot within the game, but it just felt for me like there was more space to tell a story. And Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity for me actually does that. There's probably at least 3 to maybe 4 hours of cutscenes and so on. And it's just really involving in such a way. It kind of, to me, it is almost, again, without kind of like jumping into spoilerish kind of like territory, it was, for me, it was kind of the equivalent of, as far as how the story progressed, it kind of reminded me or made me think a bit about the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Infinity War film and then Endgame. Just this kind of like these what if kind of possibilities, right, in terms of time or bending time, changing sequences and events, and I guess the consequences related to that. So yeah, I mean, that's me kind of starting off with it. Brittany, what did you think? I mean, we'll get into more detail about the game, but yeah, I want to hear a kind of short summary from you.
Yeah, something that is really interesting is like, I got that the important part or the most remarkable part of Breath of the Wild is the gameplay.
Mhm.
It totally breaks the rules in open worlds when they introduce the mechanic of uh, you can go through everything basically. It's like in other games, like you cannot go into a building or something like that. Like you need to go run around, but you can use anything in this game.
Mhm.
And in that sense, yeah, Breath of the Wild in terms of mechanic, it's okay. It's amazing. It's groundbreaking. But in terms of story line and stuff like that, it feels a little bit empty, which is
Mm.
what now Age of Calamity, it's totally different because
Mhm.
you have that balance. I played a Muso in the past, the previous Warriors, Hyrule Warriors, and I would say it was a little bit tiring and a little bit boring in some parts that you are doing the same thing over and over again.
Mm.
But with this Age of Calamities, they bought some stuffs from Breath of the Wild. For example, they use the mechanic of uh, this mechanic of to jump to attack then.
Mhm.
So that actually is really nice because it's something that you didn't see in the other warriors. And that any character is a totally different style of combat, that's really interesting also. But it's also at the same time, it's not like a random combat,
Mhm.
except for Impa, that yeah, I would say it's totally random. But the rest of them, they got like a specific thing according to their personality, and I
Mm.
love that.
Mhm.
I love that in this case the gameplay is totally related to the essence of the video game, to the
Yeah.
story, and to the stuff with many characters. And I would say uh, Age of Calamity, it's a gift for all the Breath of the Wild fans that wanted to know more about these characters, that people that wanted to know more about the champions, people to know what happens 100 years ago. And yeah, I would say in that sense, yes, you see a little bit, you understand a little bit more the characters. You see why Rivali is like that. You see, and I like that because in Breath of the Wild, you see a little bit how Urbosa uh, got this kind of maternal love to Zelda,
Mhm.
this kind of mother love, and you see a little bit more of that on Age of Calamity. So I like that you get into some details that you probably skipped on Breath of the Wild,
Mhm.
because some stuff on Breath of the Wild you get it because you read the diaries, but
Yeah.
it's like not really the most intuitive stuff to do when you want to know about someone else or something
Well,
else.
absolutely. It's like with Breath of the Wild, you had to search for the story, right? You really, you had to be that kind of person who's quite clinical and search for the story by talking to many characters, finding memories, etc. Whereas with Age of Calamity, even at its basic point, just kind of playing through and not necessarily even doing the side missions, right? There's just so much story that is told along the way, even especially for a game that essentially at heart is really just a hack and slash game, really. I mean, perhaps let's focus on the gameplay for a moment. Uh, and I'm quite a fan of beat 'em ups, hack and slash games. I love button bashing, especially if when you bring in RPG elements, which of course this game has. So I think there are around 14 characters within the game that are part of the story that you get, and then there are additional 4 characters totaling to around 18 that you can unlock when you do special achievements or missions, etc. But every single character is upgradable. You start off with Link. um Link, as well as many other characters, including Urbosa, Rivali, Zelda, even herself. They command and utilize different types of powers, abilities, weapons, and so on. um I would say it's quite, if you want to upgrade, your characters, you're likely going to kind of focus on maybe 2 or 3 at the most, but the others, you'll probably level them up to the point that you need to in order to finish specific side quests or missions. Again, these missions, they're optional. You don't have to do them. You can completely focus on the main game, but the game kind of has a way, I think, of just
Mm.
reminding you that kind of leveling up some of your characters is going to help you when you go on certain missions, because if your character's leveled down too low, for example, their attack strength, or even just their level of health will be really small in relation to characters like the good old Lionel, which makes a great return from Breath of the Wild, which in Breath of the Wild was a really difficult character to face. The Lionel once more is still difficult to face,
Oh,
although if
don't talk about that. Oh, I never beat them, honestly. The Centalion.
yeah,
Breath of the Wild, I beat them. I always die.
they
Miserable.
oh my gosh. I think the only way that I managed to defeat the Lionel so again, for those of you listening, we're talking a bit about Breath of the Wild now, not particularly Age of Calamity. Within Breath of the Wild, there are some battles that are really difficult. Like the fighting mechanic in that game, I would say, they really kind of put you into a kind of survival mode-esque kind of feeling, right?
Yeah.
Other Zelda games, like, I don't know, Majora's Mask, Ocarina of Time,
Yeah.
incredible as they were, the fights were easy, right? The fights in Breath of the Wild, when you're facing, characters like the Lionel or even like the Guardians, right? You don't get your timing right. And even if you get your timing right, their life meter is so damn large. You could end up spending, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes or whatnot, facing a character. And so it's really interesting that characters like the Lionel make its return to Age of Calamity. In a way, I'd say that they're a bit more forgiving this time. Like, they're still really difficult to face off as. And if you've got two Lionels on you, for example, like, good luck to you. But it becomes a much more engaging battle rather than, oh gosh, I'm dead, see you later. Or at least it was for me. How was it for you, Brittany?
Well, in terms of talking about Breath of the Wild, yes, it's like that. It's like I always try to avoid them and skip them.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I better run. I better run. And it's like, well, I play it on a Nintendo Switch Lite, which I would say I'm not blaming the controls, but I just realized playing another games like Mortal Kombat that it's not really a comfortable path to playing video games. You struggle like a lot in some mechanics, and yeah, there was some moments on Breath of the Wild when I struggled a little bit with the Switch Lite controls, but at the end, I managed to play the full game, and it was totally amazing. But yeah, in that sense of beating the enemies, it's like, yes, you say, when you battle against the Ganon's Fury and all these Ganon's elements representations. In Breath of the Wild, it was like it was challenging, but not impossible.
Yeah.
And it's funny how the main boss on the game it's more easy than
Oh right, yeah, absolutely.
simply enemies around. It's like I feel more scared to battle a guardian rather than to Ganon.
Isn't that funny, right? That's
Yeah.
very interesting. I kind of like, in a way, I kind of like that though, because it makes getting through a game like that more difficult, rather than, okay, they throw everything right at the final boss. Like, I do find it annoying when I play games where the final boss is just powered to the point where it's like, my gosh, like, you mean I have to go and do X amount of missions to power up in a certain way. But anyway, let's bring it back to obviously, Age of Calamity, which we're reviewing. I also got the opportunity to play the game in multiplayer mode with my son. I purchased the game for Christmas. It's a game that he said he was quite interested in after finding out from the Nintendo Direct, which came out in the summer of last year. And I've got to say, like, it was enjoyable. It was really enjoyable, like, playing across the same map and the same screen, and us kind of like dividing up ourselves and tasks amongst each other, and kind of helping each other out, looking after each other, and so on. But one of the difficulties that we certainly came across is that the frame rate slowed down. So I think the game's frame rate in one player is like around 60 frames per second, but then when it comes to playing in two player, it goes down considerably, 30 frames, sometimes even less. So, expect that slowdown, especially when there are loads of enemies. Of course, within this kind of game, that's what you do. You hack and slash at loads of enemies. But it was definitely enjoyable. I did kind of wonder or think to myself, though, like, surely the development team could have kept the frame rate as close to 60 frames per second by getting people to play with multiple switches and multiple copies of the game, which, yeah, sure, it may be more expensive. But, if we think about games like Splatoon, for example, we don't forsake quality there by the fact that people have multiple switches and games. So that, for me, kind of felt a little bit, a bit of a shame. Also, it would just be nice perhaps to play other people online. I feel like at this kind of point in time where online gameplay is a thing that's been going on, for decades now, right?
Yeah.
You would hope that that kind of thing would perhaps come as standard with a game like this, which is all about, taking control of areas, sending in characters to certain places or playing as those characters and so on. So if you're doing that in a multiplayer way, why would that not be possible with this game, with this engine? So that I kind of felt a bit kind of taken aback with. Did you manage to play the game at all in multiplayer, or was it just single player for
No,
you, Brittany?
I got the Switch Lite, so that will be impossible, I think.
Oh yeah, yeah.
with that mini
Oh
screen,
gosh, yeah.
I cannot imagine that. But I had another friend that got the game, and
Mhm.
really I miss a lot the online multiplayer, the cooperative mode,
Mm,
and I really miss that option. I don't know why they didn't make it, because for me it was more logical.
mhm.
Got like people playing in different switch at the time rather than to got two on the same
Yeah.
screen. And yeah, but like you said, sometimes it's like you appreciate to got that option rather to not have it.
Yeah, very
Uh,
true, very true. I mean,
uh,
it doesn't affect the base game, right? Your base game experience of, going through the story mode and everything.
yeah, but I would love
Um,
to do what you say, like being on
mm.
Discord with someone else and saying,
Well,
"Oh, there, go there."
well, exactly. I mean, in this case, for example, we're separated by what, hundreds of miles. It would have just been completely awesome to both be online at the same
Yeah,
time, play the game together. Like I think that's one of the unique things about this kind of review experience. On the one hand, like you got to play the game on your own, I got to play it on my own, but for this type of game, it would have been incredible to actually be on a
yes,
journey together, right?
yeah,
So yeah, but that brings me to another thing about the game, the soundtrack, which I thought was so damn
cool.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. So again, for those of you who may have played Breath of the Wild previously to Hyrule Warriors: Age of Calamity, um, many of the sounds and soundtrack elements from that game make its way over to here. There are new arrangements as well, I would say, new tracks, which have their own like particular flavors as well. Whether you're in the kind of like Gerudo town area, or if you're in the Goron area, in the mountains and so on. Different levels, different fights, and also that little detail that they put into Breath of the Wild, where when you're kind of when you're capitalizing on an enemy kind of showing a weak point and you're kind of hitting at them, the music intensifies even further, right? So yeah, no, I thought that I really loved the orchestra arrangements. I'm a big fan of the music throughout the Legend of Zelda series. It's been incredible to hear historically, from like the really old school 8-bit compositions all the way through to this point. And I definitely feel that the music in the case of this game makes its presence known, and it's definitely an important part to the journey should you pick up a copy of it. Brittany, what are your thoughts?
um, I never thought they could do more terrific and horrific the Guardians theme. It's like if you got that, I already said it, but if you had a heart attack when you hear the Guardians music on Breath of the Wild, it's even more terrifying. You feel even more stressed when you hear this music,
Mhm.
especially the spoiler when there are battles when there is more than one Guardian.
Mm,
It's like you're battling with five Guardians at the same time. You're like,
yeah.
oh gosh, what is life?
Yeah. You see everything fresh before your very eyes, right?
Yeah, so it's like I like that sense of the music in this case, the role it plays here on Age of Calamity, because it's a really chaotic game. So
Yes.
sometimes you need chaotic music for that.
Hmm.
But in this case, it's not necessary to got this kind of chaotic music. Sometimes some pieces they are more heroic pieces
Hmm.
when you feel, yes, I'm doing this because I need to save Hyrule for the honor of Hyrule or something like that. And there are other battles when it's like when Ganon is awake and you're like, oh gosh, really,
Yeah.
really, really, you feel the calamity. You know,
Yes.
it's interesting because for translation in Spanish, it's not calamity.
Oh,
It's
what
it's
is the
some-
translation?
it's something different. I wouldn't say I don't know which is the word in English, but in
Hmm.
Spanish, it's the word means is like when it's a natural disaster, we use that word for
Okay.
that.
Like an
So
apocalypse, perhaps, or I don't know. Or, yeah, no, I think I know what you mean. Wow, that's quite interesting.
yeah, for example, when there's a hurricanes and it
Hmm.
sinks the whole city or
Oh,
something.
like a disaster.
Yeah, something. Yeah, it's not this. We have, but
Hmm.
something.
But something along.
But there's a specific word for that kind of events,
Hmm.
and that's the word they put to Ganon in Spanish. So it's
Amazing.
and the game is called like that.
Yeah.
La era del cataclismo is in Spanish,
Yeah,
which
the
which
cataclysm.
it's really you feel like that.
Hmm.
You're watching everything being destroyed. You're
Hmm.
watching everything being ruined by
Uh-huh.
Ganon and everything. So doing that kind of plate of words in Spanish and
Mm.
in watching everything on the game is like, yeah, you feel like you live in that. You're trying to survive on that event, and
Yeah.
it's what happens here. It's like Hyrule trying to survive this.
Amazing. That's incredible. Yeah. Were there any other points or things that kind of stood out for you before we kind of get to the point of whether we recommend this game for people or not?
Um, yes, I would say there's another thing that it's really interesting and probably not sure if this is the moment, but the game at the end gives you more questions than answers. And there's one
Mm.
moment when you finish the game, you say you have 2,000 miles. The first is thank you Nintendo, I love you. And the second one is what the hell are you gonna do now?
Yeah.
Because it's opened the door to many possibilities and many spells.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's like I'm not sure if they're gonna do a DLC, which I will be so hyped if that
Mm.
happens. They do a
Hmm.
DLC. The game is completely it's a full game.
Yeah.
It doesn't need a DLC, but
Yeah.
it will be really appreciated a DLC. But or even if they want to use this some reference to Breath of the Wild 2, or
Mm.
I don't know what
Yeah.
they are planning to do. It's
Yeah.
like the theories and everything is like to the top of the roof.
No, totally. I'm there with you. I mean, the thing that I walked away from when the game ended was we're actually thinking about whether or not they'll take on elements of this story, right? To continue into Breath of the Wild 2. It almost feels like it's going to be its own standalone story, because then it makes it easier for the development team to focus on just that genuine kind of follow-up sequel, right? And so it can become its own particular kind of story. If we think about comics in the same sense, you have like the what if comics within the Marvel universe, right? Which some people take on as canon, other people don't necessarily. It's there for you to take or not. Um, yeah, it's I walking away from this, I'm expecting, however, whatever way that Nintendo go, there's kind of no excuse for not building on the story with Breath of the Wild 2. Now that they, and they must have experienced or played through the developmental process, Hyrule Warriors. Now that game has come out in the story, it's like there's kind of no excuse now. Like that's
And
what I want, and you better make sure you build on what is an engaging story or engaging set of ideas. Um, Oh, we didn't talk about the length of the game. How long did it take you to complete, Brittany? It took me about 50 hours to complete. So the thing to mention, without spoiling, that there are additional missions that you can do after finishing the game. I didn't do the additional missions, but I did pretty much every single side mission in lead up to completing the game. So I did that. How about you, Brittany?
Yeah, you mean to discover the secret, because there are secret
There are
hidden
various
characters.
secret characters. Yeah. So I unlocked a few. I think they're basically like one or two more for me to unlock
Yeah,
actually.
okay, right. So this is interesting because the game is really, really addictive. Uh, I started to play the game, and then you find a secondary mission. I say, go for that. And then you saw another one. I just need a little bit. I just need one lizard to complete this task.
Yes.
So
So
you
I've got
go
to
for
do
that.
this mission again, right?
Yes, eventually you don't all the secondary mission. You say, I'm not going anywhere on the main story.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yeah.
this is something it's really appreciated on a game that,
Mhm.
because sometimes there are games when you found secondary mission and you said, oh, what I should do this. But in this case, you're like, okay, I need to get this. I need to get this to power up my warriors, to get new items, because you get some resources to open new missions and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And it's like you start to trade a lot with different stuff that you don't realize you're doing more on the secondary mission rather than the main story. So
Mm.
I came to a point where say, when I was around on 25 hours or something like that, I say, okay, I'm on chapter 3. It's like chapters. It's gonna be 7 chapters.
Yeah.
So it took me around 35 hours, something like that, to finish
Mhm.
the game. But because I started to leave the secondary missions
Mhm.
aside, only doing some of them to power up or get or getting on the levels that the main story requires.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was totally addictive.
Yeah.
It was totally
Yeah.
addictive.
No, I'm with you. I mean, as you heard, like I stayed committed. I did all those secondary missions until I finished. And I guess one of the things that happened to me, which is what happens to me when I finish a lot of video games, and for those of you listening, for me playing video games personally is like reading a book. Like if there's like a sequel to a book or whatnot, and there's an engaging element enough, then I'll continue. But I kind of almost felt story wise once I'd finished Age of Calamity, even though there were additional missions, I was like, I'm done with the game. I was addicted to it, but it's like, look, I'm done. I want to go and play another game now. Astral Chain's calling me. Some of my other games are calling me. So but I guess yeah, that brings us to the next point. Recommendations. So let's split it up into two things for people who have played either Breath of the Wild or the Legend of Zelda game series. Would you recommend this game to somebody who has played games within the Legend of Zelda series and particularly Breath of the Wild?
Um, well, I would say it's a must to play first Breath of the Wild.
Hmm.
However, you can still get through the story and get through the characters, but I would say, yeah, it's a must if you want to build that relationship, that emotional connection with the characters. Because some of the characters I follow them, for example, Urbosa, I
Oh,
love her on Breath of the
I'm with
Wild.
you. I'm with you. Yeah.
I mean, in Breath of the Wild, you saw her strong personality and
Hmm.
everything. And if I haven't played Breath of the Wild, probably Urbosa will be just another champion on Hyrule Warriors.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's a must to play first Breath of the Wild and then Age of
Right.
Calamity for me. But you still can play on the order you wanted. First Age of Calamity and
Would
then
would
Breath
you
of the
would you but what would you recommend it even if, let's say, somebody is thinking of buying it and they just haven't played Breath of the Wild? Would you recommend the game?
it's a piece of game. I mean, like,
Mm.
it's a masterpiece for me.
Hmm.
Yeah, I would say yes. Yes, I recommend it, but
Hmm.
I will always I'll also advise and say,
Yeah.
if you want to get the most of that, play
Hmm.
first Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's totally like, as I said before, it's totally a different muso. It's not like the Warriors is in English. Sorry,
It's okay.
it's not. It's totally different Warriors games. It's not. It's settled. I would say also there's gonna be new Warrior games in the future taking bits from Age of Calamity,
Hmm.
because I mean they didn't reinvent the full the full settle or the template, but they bring some interesting additions, um, like the ways the on combat when you can move to the and attack them. So it's like interesting that way that it came properly from Breath of the Wild,
Hmm.
and I would say some new warriors in the future will probably take this, and it will see something that you will see in the future in future warriors.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm with you. I think, you know, overall, whether you've played Legend of Gale, I'm mixing up my words today, Legend of Zelda games in the series or not, it's a cool game to play. Um, it's different, but then also for those of you who have played Legend of Zelda games in the past, it's different from your usual. It's a different type of system, but I found it enjoyable. I found it interesting, and like Brittany said, the story's so cool. It's really well told, and it'd be amazing to see a sequel. Yeah, you heard
or
it from us first.
or an anime series.
Oh
Oh,
gosh.
now something that I really learned from this is like Link doesn't need to speak or do something else to be there. He
Hmm.
only needs to get a sword and kill people. And the narrative could be in other ones. Link, like you said one time, is just a placeholder for us to see what's going on around.
That's right.
So it will be like nice if they develop a series based on the other characters and Link only being the connection between all the all the characters. It's totally nice because that's
Yeah.
something didn't work in previous Legend of Zelda series,
Hmm.
or even games when you see some horrible games like the uh, Adventure of Link or
Oh gosh.
this
Yeah.
weird games for weird consoles, the War of Ganon,
Yeah. Well,
horrible games when you
yeah.
see Link. Not gonna talk much about
We
that, but
won't go there. You know, even when you were saying that, it made me even think about the old Legend of Zelda cartoons. Do you remember those where Link
I
actually? Oh my gosh.
I never seen
Yeah.
that. It never broadcast in my country,
Right.
but
Okay. Yeah.
but
What you
yeah,
know? What I'm gonna try and find some YouTube links for you. Like so, like I said earlier on, you know, my son played the game. He's got the game. He really loves the Legend of Zelda series. He loves the Mario games as well. And so, like, you know, when he was younger, he would watch some of the other Legend of Zelda series, like the cartoons. And yeah, they, you know, they're good to just laugh at. I'll put it that way. Don't take it seriously. If you do,
yeah,
it
can't
destroys everything
imagine,
for you.
can't imagine
Yeah.
that. Yeah, but in more a serious perspective, yeah, a series following this cutscenes format with Link
Mm,
only being a connection, it will be really nice,
I'm
and
with you on that. I'm with you on that.
I will watch it 1,000 of times
Well,
probably.
let's wait and see. You know how the big N, as they're referred to, kind of do things. It's always a secret into the last minute. Anyway, it was so amazing to be able to share this point of interest and love of gaming, but this particular game with you, Brittany. And yeah, here's to hoping that we'll have hopefully some more, you know, conversations around other games and so on within the
Yes,
mic drop.
please. Yes, please.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for listening. I'm Larry Achiampong, and you're also listening to Brittany. This is the mic drop. Take care.